Hello and welcome to Raise the Bar, the jumping podcast, all about jumping. We're talking about training. We're talking with coaches. We're talking with athletes. We are talking about how to jump higher, farther, and faster. And we have been on a roll this last year, basically talking with Olympic level track and field athletes for the most part, long jumpers, high jumpers. We're delving into some triple jumpers and some multi-event athletes. We've had many athletes who have made it to their respective countries' Olympic trials, both here in the U.S. and abroad. We've had athletes from Canada, from Norway, from the U.S., obviously. We've had people that have made it to the trials, people that have made it onto Olympic teams, and then people who have competed and won gold medals. So today we're going to be reaching out and talking with a young lady that I met just last year, who at the time was and still is, I believe, coaching at Goldenwest College here in Southern California. Her name is Ashley Anderson. She's going to be joining us here in a few minutes in our Zoom call. And Ashley is just a very impressive young lady. She's very on top of things. And when I first got in touch with her, she was talking about her history. She grew up here in Southern Cal and went to Carson High School and eventually made her way up to Cal Berkeley. And her list of accomplishments is pretty amazing. She was a California State Triple Jump champ in 2014, three-time LA City section champ. She won the Mount Sac Invitational Championship in 2014, set the meet record. She was an Arcadia individual champ 2014, and just kind of goes on and on. That was in high school. In college, three-time NCAA finalist and All-American, four-time NCAA Regional qualifier, two-time Pac-12 Podium finisher in third. Just again, on and on and on. USATF National Championship participant. So we are going to delve into Ashley's athletic background, obviously, and then I know she's still coaching, or is coaching this next season, but she's also still competing. So we're going to find out what it is that makes Ashley Anderson tick here in a few minutes. All right, I can see you. Can't hear you yet. Now she's connected.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ashley. I'm gonna turn up my sound here. I can't even hear me. There you are. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a minute. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, I know. Like 6 months.
6 months, yeah, right. So we're back, getting closer to the grind. Are you going to be coaching at Golden West again this year?
Hopefully, possibly.
Hopefully, possibly.
Yes.
They haven't inked you yet.
Uh, well, they well, um, they expressed that they did want me to come back for next season, but it was just so far away,
Right,
basically, that who knows what might happen was kind of
right,
the gist of the conversation. But I
right.
would love to. I enjoyed working with them.
Now, was last year your first year at Golden West?
Yes.
Okay, and was that your first foray into coaching?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So how did that come about? Did you know all the time you were being an athlete that you wanted to be a coach, or did it just kind of roll out your way somehow?
Not necessarily, I guess I would say. You mean in general, how did it come about me coaching or specifically working at Golden
Yeah, I
West?
mean, it's weird. Like I never really thought I was going to be a coach. To me it just kind of happened. It suggested, and I tried it out, and it stuck. So I didn't know if that was always something that you'd thought about doing, or.
Yeah, no, not necessarily, I would say. But I think like what you said, it just sort of happened. I think that that's a common trend, at least in my life, and maybe with athletes, especially track and field athletes, because I think most of us don't necessarily start off like I want to run a lot or I want to like exercise a whole lot every day,
Right.
but it's like, oh, I tried it out and it worked, and I think that that's um a common thing. And so similar to what you said, I think is the same thing. Is basically, well, I think you should coach. And before I was working at Goldenwest, I was doing like private coaching for money.
Right.
Not that I don't love um, coaching or mentoring or being a guide for younger people, but I was really like, I need some money and I need to be able to work when I want
Yeah.
and not work when I can't. So I was doing that. And then I guess someone that knew me was connected to the Goldenwest coach, and that's just basically how it happened. They were looking for someone and they thought of me. And so they sent the head coach my way, and that's basically the gist of it. But I
Yeah.
really did enjoy it.
That's so interesting the way you mentioned that, because I'm thinking back on almost all the gigs that I've ended up doing. And it seems to me that when I go out of my way, like I looking for jobs, I'm like start interviewing and this and that. And it's just like, it just seems all those doors are always closed. I don't know what it is, it's like, but hey, I'm Troy Haynes. And it's like, who's Troy Haynes? And then when somebody else goes, comes up and says, hey, we're really looking for someone, blah, blah, blah. We need somebody, are you interested or free? And it's like, oh yeah, okay. You check it out. And that's how I ended up at Vanguard, a couple of years ago. Coach Sturley came to me and asked me if I was interested, said they were looking for somebody, and it's turned out to be a great fit. So so that's awesome. I can't wait to bump into you again. We did this last year. I forget, I think it was it Irvine?
It was way out there. No, it was not APU. It's way out there in Orange County.
Yeah, somewhere in Irvine, right? Is it
No, even more south,
to the sea?
almost Dana Point, I want to say. It was
Yeah.
pretty far out.
Yeah, well, they all blend together after a while, right?
I
So
don't know
many.
why I can't think of. It's gonna come to me. I
Yeah,
know. I'm picturing it, but
my brain is like a sieve. I don't know about
Mhm.
yours. I things come in and out of my head all the time. Well, hey, I wanted to go back, and I was looking at the resume you sent, and I talked you up a little bit before you got into the waiting room. But you went to, I saw a couple different high schools on the list that were both here in the Southland, right? So is
Yes.
Narbonne and then Carson, right? So when
Mhm.
you were at those schools down here, was track and field all you did, or did you do other sports as well?
No, so I came in a cheerleader and I missed cheer tryouts my freshman year. And my dad's like, well, you can't just go to school and come home. You have to do something. Join the basketball team. Why don't you run track? Like people tell you run fast.
Right.
And so that's how I ended up, I guess, trying out for the track team. Because at that point in high school, like you can just like say I want to run track and they'll let
Right.
you run. And I was at Narbonne at this time. And so that's how I got into track. But the remainder of my high school career, yeah, I was a cheerleader, and then I also did like musicals and all that good stuff. So I was pretty busy.
Wow. Okay. So you did track and cheerleading, so no other sports. That was it, and they got their hooks in you right away. And then I'm always curious about this evolution because my coach, who has left us now, Baru Elias, he was at Long Beach City for a long time. Him and Coach Ron Alice just created some amazing dynasties at Long Beach City. They were state champs and blah blah blah. But Elias had 7, 8 high jumpers and 5 54, 55-foot triple jumpers and 26-foot long jumpers like every year at the JC. It's crazy. He's really really good coach. And I remember coming, looking to him for help when I was at UCLA, and we did a lot of triple jump stuff. I was doing triple jump bounding and this and that, and I was like, I don't really like triple jumping, coach. It was like, well, you got to do this bounding, and I ended up learning it, grudgingly, but I can honestly say no one ever came to me and said, why don't you do the triple jump? You look like you'd be really good at it. And it's
Mhm.
like I I had no desire to do it. I just kind of learned it by being around Elias because he was really good. And but I would say of all the disciplines that I've worked with, that's the one that I think I have the least intuitive feel for. I don't know what it is, whether it's just because I was better at going up than out or whatever. But
Mhm.
how did that come about for you? Was it like, did you just go right to triple jumping, or, did it kind of try everything out and end up there?
No, so when I was a freshman, I did not triple jump at all, actually. I was just running. I
Hmm.
did the 4, I did the 2, the 4x1, the 4x4. I'm like tall and I have long legs, so everybody, of course, is like 400. Like that's the first thing
Right.
that I'm going to try.
Or hurdles,
Um,
right? Yeah.
I did actually do hurdles, I think sophomore and junior year.
Hmm.
Never the short hurdles though, only the long hurdles,
Right.
which I won't say I hated, but I always wanted to try the short hurdles, but I just never had enough foot speed to do so. So, um, but actually, rewind. I went to middle school in Palos Verdes, and they would have like once a year we would have a track meet, and like they would give out ribbons and everything for like first, second, and third.
Right.
And so the events were like 50, it was like yards, 50-yard dash, 100-yard dash, 400. They had a 4x2, a
Hmm.
4x1. They had a standing triple jump and a standing long jump, which is broad jump.
Right.
Um, and I want
That's
to
a
say they
real
had a
throwback.
mile.
Hmm.
And so I would do that every year. And I would like try to do as many events as I thought I could because I just wanted to get a bunch of ribbons. So I would do the mile.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't even that good at the mile, but I would do the mile and get a ribbon there. And I would do the standing triple jump.
Okay.
And so when I got to high school, I didn't even know really anything about track. Didn't even know that it was an event
Right.
officially in track. And we were at a meet, and I was like, I've done that before. I could do that. And
Right.
then they're like, absolutely not. We don't want you getting hurt trying that. And I'm like, but I swear, like I think I could do that. I used to do that in middle school.
Right.
Um, and then finally, they let me try it sophomore year at like an all-comers meet. And so I did pretty good. And they're like, okay, so you're a triple jumper. And I'm like, yes, I've been trying to tell you guys for years. So that's basically how that happened.
Wow. So then I was recounting your exploits. You made it to the state finals in 2014 and eked out a win apparently. So how did you? I'm kidding, of course. Eking out a win. What did you jump and what was that like? I made it to that state meet my senior year also, and I didn't have anywhere as glorious a result. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so senior year I transferred to Carson High School. So I was at Narbonne for 3 years
Hmm.
and then transferred my senior year. And I honestly I just had a really good senior year. I didn't lose a single meet. I actually had to I was sitting out up until Arcadia. Arcadia was like my first meet that I was able to jump because they had the transfer rules.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Right, right, right.
Right. So the transfer rule was that you had to sit out until like April 1st or
That's
something like that.
crazy. In high school?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. So I was competing at like Ben Brown. I competed at Ben Brown. I
right.
actually won at Ben Brown, I think, if I can remember correctly. And I competed at a couple of other little far away unattached meets. I was competing unattached before
Right.
I came and I jumped at Arcadia.
Right.
And then I was just basically on a roll. I just had a good year. That's all I can
Yeah.
say. I was the favorite coming in to win state, actually. So
Yeah.
it would have been like an upset or a surprise if I did not win.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I jumped 41.3, which was a PR for me at that time. It was like a 2-inch PR. I jumped 41.1 at Mount Sac like a month or so
Right.
before.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that was my PR coming out of high school. And coming into senior year, my PR was 39.11.
Hmm.
So I
That's a
improved.
big improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, I improved a great deal actually junior to senior year.
Yeah. Wow. So when you mentioned Carson, I grew up in the 80s in Long Beach, and the Carson and Banning rivalry was unbelievable. Was that what
Mhm.
was it like walking into that? Did that trickle down from football to everything else?
No, that's not a thing anymore.
Really?
Not the Carson Banning rivalry. Banning definitely has fallen off
Yeah.
a great deal.
Okay.
in football and other sports, I'm assuming. Well, I don't know what they are like now. Maybe they've come
Right.
back up. I don't know. But when I was in high school, it was actually more so of a Narbonne Carson rivalry just because of football. Narbonne was a football powerhouse at the time.
Okay.
When I was at Narbonne and I was a cheerleader, we were going to like the state championship. We were city champs multiple times over. So Narbonne was a football powerhouse and Carson was good as well. And we
Right.
actually had a lot of people doing the opposite thing that I did, which was transferring from Carson
To
to
Narbonne
to
for
go to
football.
Narbonne
Yeah.
to play football.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was the opposite. I was a Narbonne girl, and I actually cheered at Carson as well. And people, whenever we would play Narbonne, people would just look at me like so sideways because I had so many friends that were still cheerleading or still playing football, and
Yeah.
so obviously I was. I won't say I was biased. I was rooting for us to win, but I had people on both sides.
Right.
But
Right. Absolutely. Well,
yeah,
it's too bad now with all this name, image, and likeness kind of stuff. I think you missed your window of opportunity there. If you'd have been bouncing from one to the other, and I was going to ask you what your signing bonus was and all that for jumping ship and switching schools.
yeah,
Senior year.
that would have been nice. But honestly, being recruited and all the politics and the drama between the schools and all that stuff, I was never wanting to be a part of it. My parents definitely helped me out a lot. Like when I
Yeah.
was trying to decide where I wanted to transfer to, because I actually, when I was still at Narbonne, I was training with like a private coach, like how I'm a private coach now, and I
Right.
have some
Right.
high school athletes um, who was at Sarah High School, and he had a lot of athletes from all over the place, which is actually how I met Kendall,
Right.
who you brought up, right? So he had a lot of different athletes plus Sarah athletes, and Sarah at this time was like the powerhouse. It was like Sarah and it was Polly, and they
Okay.
would like go back and forth like this. So when it was time for me to decide where I wanted to transfer, everybody's like, well, the obvious choice would be to transfer to Sarah.
Right.
Um, but I guess there was some politics involved. I personally am not aware because my parents were like, you just we'll let you know where you're gonna go to school. Like
Right.
this is
Right.
our decision to make. So I don't actually know all the politics that ended up going into that decision, thankfully, because even being recruited to go to college was like way too much.
Yeah.
So I was happy to be left out of that.
Yeah, well, again, you're talking about stuff that I don't even know anything about. I remember my senior year, my family, nobody in my family had been to college, and there were no athletes, so I was an only kid, didn't have brothers and sisters that had been down the road before. So, from my junior year jumping and then, having a senior year, I forget, somebody told me, they go, you should write one of these coaches, and see if they're interested in you. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a plan. So I wrote a letter to UCLA and told them, I wanted to jump 7 feet and I wanted to go to the state meet and, goals and everything. And I ended up applying there my senior year, in the fall, and they sent back my application and said it was late. I was like, oh, okay. And they didn't even give me a glance until, after CIF. So like no idea what that was all about. And now I'm coaching athletes and I talk with athletes like yourself that were like, oh yeah, I was recruited to go all these places and I went on these trips, and I'm just like, what was I doing? I had no clue about any of that. I was like jumping 6'10" and 3/4 back in the day. I mean, I ended up walking on to UCLA. They were like, oh yeah, we'll let you walk on. You can come
After you
try
jumped
out.
6'10"?
Yeah, 6'10", 3/4.
Oh
I was CIF
wow.
champ and won the Masters meet and went up to
Oh
state.
wow.
And they, it was like, well, they were loaded. They had Dell Davis jumping 7'7" and Lee Balkin jumping
Okay.
7'4". And I think when I came in, I was like number 7 on the depth chart. It was crazy.
Oh man.
Those were the days, right? It's nothing like that now. But
Yeah.
I'm more curious not to talk about how lame I was, but let's talk about you and what was that recruiting process like for our young listeners, those of you that are, doing well your junior and senior years and you're looking for colleges. Maybe Ashley can shed a little light on what that process is like and how to succeed at it.
So I would like to say that it was definitely a little bit different for me just because I did transfer junior to senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically, there was like a lull because I wasn't competing. And
Right.
in my opinion, I was getting like letters, and I wasn't even sometimes getting the letters because they were going to Narbonne and I was at Carson and they weren't even like giving them to me.
Right.
And I remember going there and being
That's
like,
right.
somebody's like, you have a stack of letters in the AD's office. And I'm like, I need to get them. Um, so basically, I actually signed with Cal right before I opened up at Arcadia. Um, which may have been a good or a bad decision. I won't say. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Cal. I have no regrets. Right. So I think it worked out for the best. But before that, I had a lot of people tell me, I am going to give your number to the Cal coach. My daughter, she jumps at Cal, or she goes to Cal. I know the coach. I'm gonna, multiple people on multiple occasions, and they never called me. Never ever. Yeah. And like at one point, somebody's like, I'm gonna talk to the Cal coach. I'm like, don't even bother. Like you're like the fourth person to say this to me.
Right.
And then so I jumped at the California indoor meet, like that one winter championship meet that they have up in Fresno.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about that.
I haven't heard about that one.
So there's like a California State Indoor Championship, right? And it's like one meet where you jump indoors. So it's kind of like you're just going just to go at.
Yeah, this is California, right? Why are we jumping indoors? Yeah, I get
it. And so I jumped pretty good there. I think I jumped like 40 feet and some change. And that was like the very first time I talked to the Cal coach. But he said to me, and I'll never forget, he said, I had to come see you jump first. A lot of people were talking to me about you, but I had to come see you jump, and I had to see what you were like when you were jumping. So that is definitely one tip I can give people is you never know who is watching you. And it can be to your advantage or it can be to your detriment, how you present or how you act when you are competing, when you're in the warm-up area, when you're talking to your friend in the line at the bathroom. You never, ever, ever know. So he was just like, well, I'm happy that you have a positive demeanor and a positive attitude. Lucky for me, I was doing well. I won. So of course I was in a good mood. I was down there, chit-chatting and having a good time because I was doing well, luckily. But yeah, so that was the first time I talked to him. And truth be told, I wanted to go to USC as an LA kid. I did want to go to USC, and I actually went to like one of their recruit nights. They had like a recruit night with football, track athletes. Like it was like a group of us, and they took us to a football game and all this good stuff. And I remember telling the coach, Coach Quincy, like, I'm gonna win state. And he's like, are you sure? I was like, I'm totally positive. And this is actually in fall.
Right.
He's like, okay, well, maybe if you jump 44 feet, you can come here. I was like,
all right.
You Louise, like, okay. Yeah. So, I went on a visit to San Jose State. And the coach at that time, I won't say any names or anything like that, but sometimes coaches will try to say things to you to sway you one way or another, or be very, very manipulative. And I was actually just having like a little discussion. I reposted something on my page. I have a page, The Black Student Athlete, where I post like tweets or videos or stuff like that. Just to foster conversation. And we were talking about parents and adult figures being involved in the recruiting process when you're dealing with kids and college coaches. And I think it's really important that you have adults be a part of that, because coaches will sometimes say things like this coach said to me that I would not be offered by anybody else. Like everybody else has already made all their offers. And this is like January. Like I have not even competed yet. The season has not even started yet. And if I wasn't already offered, I wasn't getting any offers. So this was a good offer. Yeah. He needed to take it, basically, is what he's telling me.
Right.
And it wasn't even, it was a partial actually.
Right.
And I'm like, really? In my head, I'm like, I'm the best girl in California.
Right.
Like, could it be? And I remember talking to my parents, and I mean, they hadn't been through the process either. And so they're like, well, maybe you should sign. And then, if you don't end up wanting to go there, you can just tell them never mind. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to commit and then go back on my word. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like you really have to tread lightly. I don't know. I ended up definitely not taking that offer.
That's
um
interesting. So he tried to strong arm you into.
basically, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. And at this point in time, they didn't even have a track. Like they were still building their track. I think they're actually still building their track.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they were practicing at like, I think they were practicing at a nearby JC or something like that.
Hmm.
And so they were in the process of rebuilding their program, which is good now. They actually have they always have some squad at San Jose, so that's good to see. But yeah, shortly after that, I went on my visit to Cal, and the head coach told me, he was just like, "Look, we're Cal. Like, I'm not gonna beg you. We do want you to come here, but I'm
Right.
not going to beg. Like,
Yeah.
we're a great school, great sports, and all this stuff." And I enjoyed my visit, and I clicked with the people on the team, and I was still kind of like telling the line, because at this point I had not competed. I was competing unattached.
Right. Right.
So I hadn't jumped. And I remember somebody calling me and was like, why wouldn't you go to Berkeley? It's like the best school that you could go to. It's even better than, no offense, UCLA.
Right.
This is what they
Right.
said to me. And I was like, it is? And they're like, yeah, at this point I didn't know. And so that was kind of what swayed me to say, okay, I'll go to Berkeley. I also had a coach come to my house from Oklahoma, and this was so
Really?
funny. So they offered me a full ride, came to my house at dinner. I actually have a picture from way back then. I looked crazy, but came to my house, sat at my kitchen table with me and my parents, offered me a full scholarship and a visit. Okay. And I'm like, oh my God, this is Oklahoma. I know about Oklahoma.
Right. Right.
They have great legacy, great reputation when it comes to sports. So I'm like, okay. And then my mom was like, you are not going to Oklahoma. You are not going to Oklahoma. And I was like, what? She's like, it snows. It snows there. You're not going to survive there. You will hate it. And she was like, what you're not going to do is waste these people's time, waste their money if you're not going to go. And I can tell you right now, you're not going to want to go there.
Really?
So let's just not take the visit. Don't waste their time. Don't waste their energy. Like, let's just tell them no.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have gone on that visit, but I think ultimately she was right.
Right.
But I actually had, but I was like, but I don't want to, be mean. It's hard to say no. Like, there comes a point where like your phone is ringing and like you're looking at it, and like I'm just like sitting it down, because I'm just like, I don't have an answer, because they're calling me like, so what are you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like 17, and like how do I say no? What should I say? I don't want them to take their offer away. Am I taking too long? So like I would just watch the phone ring, and my parents would be like, I'll talk to them. Like, don't worry. If you don't want to go there, I'll let them know. You don't have to worry about that. Because like I just was feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then of course I jumped at Arcadia, and I won Arcadia, and I can't remember exactly what I jumped. It was like in the 40s, 40 feet something, but I was fouling like some solid jumps, like maybe 42s and some change. And had a lot after that meet, like USC, Oregon, UCLA. Did you sign? Did you sign? And I'm like, we just signed. I had just signed like a couple of weeks prior, and then opened up at Arcadia. And everybody's like, well, did you sign? Did you sign? I'm like, yeah, we just signed.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to be done with it, though. Very, very happy to be done with it, because it was overwhelming. It was. I mean, even to this day, like I have a hard time saying no. Like, so I can just imagine like being 17 and like dealing with a lot of adults, and feeling like you owe people an answer, or you owe people a response. And ultimately, I won't say that you don't. Owe is not the right way to feel. Like I owe
Yeah.
them something for offering
For
me an
showing interest.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how I was feeling. And so I was just like, I don't have a response. I don't have a yes or no. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to
Yeah.
be mean, like this or that. And so I was very happy to have my parents involved. And my coaches, obviously, they
Right.
helped me out a lot as well.
I'm listening to these school names come up and I'm so jealous. I was thinking, nobody asked me to go on any recruiting trips or anything. I was like, I would be thinking, before we opened up this conversation, I was thinking, okay, if I was going to counsel somebody, I'd be like, go on every trip you can. Like go everywhere. Like if they're going to fly you to New York, go to New York. If they're going to fly you to Oklahoma, go to Oklahoma, because man, it's so cool, the college environment. Like you said, Oklahoma football is crazy, right? And then
Yeah.
you go up to Cal. I mean, Cal is one of the flagship universities of our nation. They're every year in the top 5 for sure, as far as academics, and
Mhm.
sports is very solid there, and just a who's who list of alumni and everything else. And obviously great choice to go to Cal. I think we went against you guys every year, not my freshman year, but every year after that. I jumped against John Morris up at Cal, and just some great athletes. And so you have all these places that can call you and go, but I just keep thinking, for a young person, especially travel. Travel is so interesting to me. The first time I got to travel anywhere was being at UCLA. We went up to Oregon. That was one of our big trips. And then I think my sophomore year we went to Montana, that was an interesting trip. And Big Sky is a real thing, by the way. I'd never understood what that was. If you've never been
What
to
is it?
Montana, when you get off the plane, there are no buildings. It's like, I mean, there are, but they're all like maybe one story. And so
Uh,
just above the building, there's blue sky, because there's almost nobody around. So there's no cars, there's not a lot of pollution, and
okay.
it goes blue immediately. And the vault of the sky, if there are no clouds, it's the weirdest thing. I almost picture it's like being inside one of those snow globes, but without the snow. But
Oh,
it's
that's
like
kind of
this,
scary.
it's like you can't even perceive depth. I don't understand. It's almost like the weight of the sky is hanging on you. I don't know how to explain it. It's
I
kind
think
of,
I understand what you're saying.
I would say I would understand how somebody could be agoraphobic, like afraid of
Yes.
open spaces. That's kind of what it is. It's like there's a lot of open space in Montana. But so that was an experience, right? But on a weird way. But so you cut right through it all and went to Cal. Awesome. So what was my question I was going to have you for Cal, when you got there as just winning state, you come in and you're all that, and what was it like up there? Who was your coach, and first of all, what did you end up majoring in when you got to Cal? What did you study?
Let me preface this by saying I struggled a great deal my first year at Cal. That
Yeah.
transition was very, very rough. I thought I was going in wanting to do kinesiology, but Cal actually doesn't have a kinesiology major. So most people would do nutritional science and then let that take them
Okay.
into whatever kind of. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do nutritional science. And my first semester, I took nutritional science, and I hated it. Oh my
Yeah.
god, I absolutely hated it. I took 3 classes my first semester: nutritional science, calculus, which oh
Ugh.
yeah, right, calculus, and I took African American studies. And first and foremost, 3 classes is like a setup. Like you want to have maybe 4, at least 4. And then I took kind of like an advanced calculus class, which I should not have done. And then nutritional science, I just was not interested in. Long story short, horrible, horrible, horrible first semester. Really bad. And that's when I knew that I was not going to be any kind of nutritional science,
Right.
kinesiology, or hard science major. I knew that at that point. So then I said, oh, well, maybe I'll do econ. But at Berkeley, they make the intro classes pretty difficult so that people that may not have an affinity for it or B, that big of an interest in it are going to be like, okay, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
So the very first economics course I took was an intro to economics, and it was so hard.
Yeah.
And my parents, they were both econ money people. Like they both went to college. And my mom, she was a bank VP, and my dad was a director of financial aid at a college. So they were both money people, and they're like, economics is super easy.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, when I got there, it was math. It was like calculus all over again. And I was like, you guys said it was easy. And so I was like, okay, this is not economics either, you know?
Yeah.
And then I took a legal studies class, summer school. I had to do summer school to like get myself together because I was falling behind at this point.
Yeah.
So I was in summer school. I took the legal studies course. It was intro to criminal law, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, I'm a legal studies major. And then that was that. So I majored in legal studies.
So legal studies, and what is that leading to? Do you want to become a lawyer? Are you already a lawyer? What's the plan?
Possibly. I went and got also a master's of legal studies, which same degree but different area, different type of study. So at Berkeley, your legal studies program is going to be jurisprudence, more about like the foundations of law, the history of law,
right,
philosophy of law, how it's coming about, how it applies, blah, blah, blah. My master's program was actually like the fundamental study of law. So I was taking like contract law, negotiation skills, property law, like all of that stuff. I thought I maybe wanted to be an attorney. And then when I was coming out of Cal, I actually took the LSAT a couple of times. It's kind of like, do I want to spend the next 3 years in school and get all this debt? And I was just kind of like, let me just see if like I really, really want to do that.
Yeah.
Before I decide to actually be an attorney. But my parents, of course, are like, but a bachelor's degree is nothing. You need another degree. Like, it's not what it used to be. So that's why I ended up getting my master's, which is great for a lot of other things, just short of being an attorney, which is totally fine. So
I don't know about you. Whenever I think of attorneys, like I grew up and watched LA Law was a big show when I was in college at UCLA. And then, Perry Mason when I was a kid. So I think most Americans, I might be stepping out of line by saying, when you talk about being a lawyer, I always picture court cases, and arguing with the judge and talking to the jury and, my opening argument, my closing argument. But there's a lot of law that goes on way outside of those lines, like you're saying.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got people that do research, and you've got, who are just not equipped to step up in front of anybody and speak.
Right. So those are like, as an attorney, you have to decide what kind of attorney you want to be, what kind of law you want to practice, obviously. And so like some people are like, no, I'm definitely not a litigator. Litigators, the attorneys that are arguing the court cases. So, and then you have I'm absolutely a litigator. Like that's my thing. Like, so it's all about finding your strengths and what works for you.
Interesting. I did a jury duty gig a couple years ago, and I ended up, I have no idea how. I think nobody else wanted to do it, but I ended up being the foreman of the jury, which was kind of funny. But we're listening to this case, and they had this guy who he got arrested for, stealing. I think he got into the vault somehow at some, I want to say like a Home Depot or something. Like they cased it out. He had a couple buddies, but then they were waiting outside, and the way that they described the case and everything, all of us in the room, I think had seen too much in the way of TV, but we're like, okay, how did they catch this guy? They had a cup of his that he left in the bathroom or something, and they're going, okay, so they had DNA evidence. And I'm like, but all these questions came up. I've watched too much TV. I'm like, was your DNA already in the database? And the lawyer that he had, I don't know, it must have been court appointed. The guy was really bad. It's like going, okay, he calls up, tries to throw the cop under the bus, goes, okay, so how many of these cases have you done? And the guy's like, I've done 95,000 of these cases. Oh, so are you an expert in this field? Yes. Oh, so is this DNA this guy's? Yes. Okay, you're dismissed. I'm like going, oh, great job. Like, you call this guy in. I'm going to debunk the witness. And basically, he just corroborated everything that was against the guy. I'm like, okay, what was your plan in calling this cop up? This guy that worked in the evidence room as a, it was, we all just sat around in the jury room later and just poked holes and everything. And you go, so the guy did it, right? I'm like, do we need to deliberate for another 10 hours, or can we just say that this guy did it? And everybody's like, yeah, he pretty much did it. Let's wrap it up. I'm like, okay, does everybody agree the guy had the worst, trial appointed lawyer ever? It was so bad. Like, you can see it's just like anything else. There are people that are good at what they do. And then, there's people who are like, maybe this being a lawyer thing might not be your cup of tea.
But there are a lot of public defenders. A lot of public defenders are, maybe even most, are they handle a very high amount of cases, and they do not get paid what
right
you would think attorneys, or what attorneys do get paid, especially like private attorneys, corporate attorneys. But they make a lot of money. Public defenders, there's not a lot of money in helping people.
Right.
Like, to be clear. So
it's almost like being a social worker, right? Yeah.
But there's a huge need. People need attorneys, especially considering how much they cost, private attorneys. So for that reason right there, the public defenders sometimes don't have a lot of time to formulate a proper defense, a lot of resources to do so. Yes. And so then you have things happen like that. Not to make any excuses, but
no.
There's a little bit of nuance there that goes into that.
I love the fact that you're defending that too, because it is easy to sit on the outside and go, oh, like, why didn't you do this? Like, again, too much TV for sure. So I'm
surprised they let you on the jury.
Right. I know. Oh my gosh. Silly. I usually I'm like everybody else. I think you just flee jury duty whenever you can. But the couple times that I've gotten called, one time I got called and sat there for a couple witnesses, and then they settled the case. It was some court, it wasn't a criminal case. And then the second time we got called to the jury and went through the whole thing, selecting jury. They ask you a couple questions, you're acceptable. Okay. And that one went on for a week or something, which was interesting. Being a school teacher, it's, it gets you I had to miss school. So you had to get a sub and all that. And the principal's never happy about that. So yeah, quite an experience with the legal system. So when you went up to Cal, now your list of accomplishments kept growing. So you got to the NC2As. I saw you did what I was unable to do the one time I went. So you went 4 times, I saw, or you went to the regionals. I got it right here. You went to the regionals 4 times. You went to the finals 3 times, and were an All-American, which means you have to finish in the top 8 to be an All-American. Is that right?
Well, no. So there are like 3 levels of All-Americans: first team, second team, honorable mention. If you go to nationals, you are automatically an All-American, basically. If you finish in the top 8, then you're first team, and you get like this really nice like certificate like in the mail that they send you, and like the plaque or whatever the case may be. But if you go to nationals or like the finals, then you're an All-American. If you make it, it's like top 8, then top 16, and then everybody else. So it's like first team, second team, third team, basically.
Okay. All right. So maybe I can tell everybody as an All-American, because I did make it to the finals my senior year.
Yeah.
I came in 9th. So I wasn't the first team. I was, but nobody ever said anything about
second team.
Right,
you would be second
back
team.
in 1986.
That's great.
So this is 1986, so it may have been like back in the ancient time.
I don't know what the rules were at that time, but at least now I would consider you to be an All-American. Yes.
All right, that's good to know. I grew up a couple inches. Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about now, Ashley, because I got the feeling just from our conversation on Instagram that you're still thinking about competing. And does that mean that we're thinking about the trials and the Olympics and all that?
Yes. So I competed last year, which the second time that I ran into you, I was actually competing that day. Yeah, that I was competing that day when I ran into you at
that meet at
CSUN.
Yes.
Yeah, it was at CSUN. So So last year was my first year back after 3 years, and oh my goodness gracious, I don't know what I expected. I think my expectations were really high.
Right. Right.
Um, but it was like a slow crawl. It was like a slow crawl trying to like get back to myself. And then, but like I'm a totally different person now than I was in like high school, college. And so I
Right.
had to really realize that. And then people were telling me like you're totally completely different. Cause I'm like, I should be doing this, I should be jumping this, I should be faster, I should be this. They're like, but
Right.
you are no longer the same. So you have to first get acclimated with who you are now, the way your body works, moves, and then you can start maybe figuring out what you should or could jump. And
Right.
so yeah, so last year was it was it was hard, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
So did you this I don't know what your experience was like in that area. I did do some competing after I left UCLA, and it was a real, mixed box for me. I went from coaches to coaching myself one time, and then found another coach, and by the time I did that whole run, and I think I competed till I was 28. I remember trying to make the trials in 92. That was my last year. And then I was like, okay, you're 28. You're not getting any better. It's time to get a real job and,
right.
stop putting all your eggs in the basket of, as a kid, I watched Bruce Jenner win the decathlon gold in 1976, and he was on the Wheaties box. I was 12 years old, and I'm like, I want to be on a Wheaties box. That's cool. And I chased that dream for a long time before I finally said, I just don't think I have the chops for it. And so when did you decide to start competing again last year? Was it while as you were starting to coach, or had you made that decision even before the season?
Right. So I was actually training. So, okay, let me not say last year. This season, 2022 was my first season back.
Okay.
Last year is when I started training for this season. Um, so basically, COVID was like a total realization, like, okay, I was working at a law firm and I hated it. I actually hated it from like the very first day.
Right.
But my mom was like, you just need to have money in your pocket, pay your car note. You're going to grad school, like it'll be great, just grind it out. So I was like, okay, so I just grinded it out for almost 2 years. And then that was all I was doing all day. Like with COVID, it's like I wasn't going outside. I was waking up, I was listening to people complain, handling their business all day, drinking some wine, going to sleep, waking up and doing the same thing. And I was like, this just cannot be, it just didn't seem valuable or it didn't seem purposeful.
Right.
And the pay wasn't enough to make me ignore those things. So that's when I was like, okay, no, thank you. And so I've always wanted to be like, maybe like doing a little bit of entertainment, so like modeling, acting, like stuff like that. And so during COVID, I was like going up to, there's this field in Long Beach, Chittick Field, I'm sure you know. So Chittick Field, that was like the only track open during COVID. And so like you would go and you could barely get a lane. Like it'll be like high school teams, youth teams, pros, like everybody's out there training because everything else was closed. And so I would go there and I would like hang out kind of with my high school coach from Carson, and like some of even like people that I was in high school. We would go and like we would like go out there and we would work out or kind of like mess around, like do some bouncing stuff and watch the high school kids and all that stuff. And then like more frequently, like, why don't you just jump? Like, why don't you just jump? Like, you really should still do it. And so I was kind of like, I don't know, like I never wanted to stop, but I always felt like, okay, I had to get a job. I had to go back to school. Like, because I remember telling my parents when I was graduating, I was about to graduate, and I was like, well, I really want to keep, running track, and I would like to, model and do that stuff. Because at this point, we didn't have the NIL, so you couldn't model at the same time that you were being an athlete. You couldn't do any of that stuff.
Bad timing.
Unless you had done it before, then you could do it. So I was like, yeah, I want to, try this stuff. And they're like, but how are you going to support yourself? Like, how are you going to, pay
Right.
your rent? You have to have a job. You have to have this. And my parents are very, very, very old fashioned, very old fashioned. I love them, but they are old fashioned and they're practical. And they're like the kind of people that it's like, okay, you stay at your job for 30 years. You have a
Right.
retirement account. You have your pension. My dad always says to me, you want to be at a point to where you can retire and make the same money you were making when you were working.
Right.
That's what he always says to me. You want to be able to have the choice of, do I want to work or not? And that's how you need to set yourself up.
Yeah.
So they're like, you stay at a job for 30 years, get your retirement account, and you work it out like that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that sounds horrible. Like, especially as an athlete, like all I was doing, I was running, I was exercising, I was having a blast traveling. And then just at the drop of a dime, I'm supposed to now be in an office all day at the computer. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, obviously, let me just ride this wave a little bit. But
right.
But I didn't. I went to school, I got a job, and I was like, but I hate it, know? And then so I actually did a commercial and it paid me very well. And I was like, okay,
right.
I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it. Like, is this point in time or never? Is how I felt. Kind of like, I have a little support, my expenses are low, I have some money.
Right.
I'm just gonna go for it. And that's pretty much how that came about.
Okay. Awesome. Well, so what is the landscape like then, and the goal? Like, starting out last year, I remember when we bumped into each other at Cal State Northridge. That was the first meet that I was working with Barbara Bachaka from Canada. So I remember as you walked by, when I saw you, hey, and I was like, hey, and then I was like so focused on her competing that, I hope you don't think it was like like that, but I remember
No.
okay, I saw you, but then I was like totally focused on something else. But I remember thinking, here's this meet, and it was so small, like really, really small, and I was even from an old like me, I'm like, this is one of those meets. I'm like, okay. And at the same time, as small as it was, Barb ended up competing against two heptathletes from England or something that were there, that were and jumping, 5'8" or 5'9" or something, and not bad and really nice. Ended up talking with them and following them on Instagram. I think I'm still trying to get one of them to do a podcast like yourself. So that there was that, and then you're like, okay, so this is where we start. And then later on that season, she jumped at Mount Sac, but there's all those different levels of Mount Sac. So she was in the Saturday, and then they bumped her to Friday. And so she ended up winning on Friday, and she didn't think could jump against Vashti and all those gals. So that was, and Tyra, she wanted to jump against Tyra and Vashti and all that. And she would have come in second if she would have jumped on Saturday with the same height. Who knows if she would have performed like that? She might have, we don't know, but she had a great meet. But I just remember thinking, wow, this is like, there's, all these gradations of getting up to here. So for you, what is it going to take for you to get up to that next step? What is the next step? I mean, we're talking, US, there's so much stuff going on here we've got, this is that weird in-between year, right? We're kind of on the 2023 season. So you've got that in-betweener year. It's not an Olympic year, but it's really starting to ramp up and all that.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be another world championship. That's what someone was telling me.
Right? 2023 should be, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. There's going to be another world championships and then the Olympics. So, oh man, I almost wish I hadn't started so late, because I feel like I really need to get on it, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly how it works in my life, how I can make it work. Coaching, facilities, resources, like all that stuff. I'm still trying to figure that out. So I can't even really give you an answer. I know I need a very, very, very solid program.
Right.
So
yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I did the same. Once I left UCLA, my first year out, I did nothing. and then I actually left school for a year. My mom kicked me out of the house. I remember that. My mom was very old school, like your mom. So she goes, "Oh, you're not going to go to school." She goes, "Where are you going to live?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Where am I going to live?" She's like,
Oh
you're not going to
man.
live here, So I'm like, so I ended up, moving out. I got like 2 or 3 part-time jobs because I wanted to train for the trials in '88. So I'd found my coach, that I wanted to work with in '86. And '87, I wasted the whole year. I was there on campus and I was going to classes, and it was like I was in this fog of like a dream world because I was no longer on the team. And it was like a huge part of my identity was gone. I was no longer
Yes.
on the UCLA track team and I didn't have any goals. Like my
Right.
senior year, I was like, I got to jump 7.3 1/2. I got to go to nationals at least once in my career, boom, 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 boom. And it all lined up. It all came around and it happened and I made it there and it was a great year. And then the next year, I don't know if it was both the letdown year and then I'm not actually involved again here year. And it was horrible. I hate 1987 is
Yes.
one of the worst years of my life that I remember where I was going through
Yeah.
it. What am I doing? And so I told my mom, I'm like, I had that, it wasn't an aha, but it was like, I know what I need. I need to get back to training and I need to train. And I go, the trials are '88. It's like it was like a little light bulb goes off. It's like,
It lines up
and I
perfectly.
won't go to school because school is distracting. It's like I can train with Elias. So I ended up moving to Long Beach, where I was from in high school. When I went away to UCLA, I came back and I worked 2 or 3 different jobs at golf courses and, whatever, just enough to scrape enough money to pay rent and train, and I learned a lot. It was actually a really fun year. And I always felt better about putting all my chips in the middle of the pile and just going, okay, this is it, because it's too hard for me to do a myriad of things. I always had that trouble. At UCLA, it was plenty to worry about school and track. If you threw a job in there, like, I don't know if your parents made you get a job. I ended up having a job a couple times, right? And then if you threw a relationship on top of that of any kind, everything would fall apart. Like I could not make that all work. I don't know if I'm just, but once you simplify the choices for me, it was easier, right? So
Yes.
and then what you're talking about, the infrastructure is just not there for you when you leave college. When you get out of the college shelter, it's like I always quote this line to my kids that I'm teaching from Lilo and Stitch. It's Ving Rhames tells her at one point, he goes, "Thus far you have been adrift in the sheltered harbor of my patience." And it's like, and now you're out. It's like when you get out of that sheltered harbor, you're like, what is going on? There's nothing. There's
Yes.
nobody, unless you're one of those elites that everybody's dying, I guess, and fighting for you and shoving contracts under your nose to sign, which I was not. I would love to have been one of those, but it was like, okay, where are these meets? And there's no roadmap set up, I tell you.
Not at all. It's really tragic. I mean, I feel like growing up an athlete, if you've been an athlete your whole life, you've been a student athlete your entire life. Like even if you weren't playing on a sports team at your school, you were still a student and you were still an athlete. And those were like your two things,
Yep.
your main things in college. And then you graduate school, you're no longer a student and you're no longer an athlete. So then I feel like you lose all sense of self. And I think a lot of collegiate athletes go through this same wave where it's like, okay, what am I supposed to be now if I'm not a student, nor am I an athlete? Who am I? And
Right.
and that was I went through the same exact thing. I went through the same
Yeah.
exact thing. Um, and I think and that was part of the reason why I started the page, the Black Student Athlete, and I started a group on campus, the Black Student Athlete Committee, because there was so much more out there for me and for other student athletes when you're in college. Like there is a lot to go. There are a lot of things for you to do to develop yourself, but I think we are so focused on our sport and hopefully your studies. I wasn't when
Right.
I first got there, but then by then I was. admittedly, but I think you're so focused on that you don't really see anything else. And coaches also can foster that as well.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Coaches, yes, but also just that environment completely, because it's like you're here on a scholarship. This is your main priority. Forget anything else,
Right.
kind
Right.
of.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of
It was
like
your job.
right. That's kind of like the idea. I never had I didn't have an internship. I didn't have a job. I graduated college with no work experience, like
Uh-huh.
a bachelor's degree. And I was like, what's going on? And so it wasn't until I found other things, other extracurriculars and other groups when I was in college that I really started to thrive on the track. Like I said, my first year was like a total doozy. I was hating my life. I was doing bad I was doing bad in track, doing bad in school. And I was like, what in the world
Hmm.
is going on? Like, anything. That's the other thing. It's like I was always good at something. I was good at cheerleading, stumbled into track, was
Right.
good at that. Now I'm at a point where I have to figure out what I want to study or
Yeah.
figure out what kind of job I might want to have. I've never had to figure out anything.
Yeah.
I've always been thrust into something and been great at it. So now I'm
Yeah.
at a point where I'm like, well, what would I be great at now other than track? So I have to start running track again.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny because it's almost like a midlife crisis, right? What you're talking about is like, you know, and I just found that interesting. I look back on that same period. I started coaching at Orange Coast College right after I left UCLA, and that was fun and good. And it was, I didn't think about it. I didn't plan it. It happened. It was fun. And I did it for like 6 years. And it was a, like $2,500 stipend or something for whatever from January to May, right? Like
Oh,
short,
wow.
sweet. This is back in the 80s, right? Still. So 88, 9 would have been my first year, 1989 at Orange Coast College. So yeah. But it was like that was cool. But then there was still that part of me. I knew I didn't know then that I should have. The head coach told me at the time, Fred Hokinson, great guy, great staff there. They were they kept telling me, they go, look, you got to go and get your master's, because they saw something in me that said this guy's going to end up being a coach and he's going to do whatever. And I did not realize that they were trying to groom me to maybe be the head guy there. Because you get your master's at the JC level, you can get one of those jobs where you're going to make like $150,000 a year, and you're teaching 3 classes, racquetball,
Right.
remedial stretching, and tennis or something. I mean, like you
Right.
work 10 hours a week instead of the 25 or 30 I spend teaching PE at the high school level, and then you've got that gig, right? And so I was like, well, I don't want to go. I was like, I don't want to go back to college. Like I had okay, it was okay, but it was like I didn't get the value of it, and it was like I'm 22 years old, 23, and I'm thinking I want to go to the Olympics still. I'd made that commitment. I'm gonna I'm gonna get there. I never even made it to the trials, so it's like I gave that shot, but it was like I look back at it now and I'm like, that was a mistake. I now have the master's, but it was like I stepped out of that stream for about 15 years when I went to high school and started coaching at the high school level. And so now getting back to even the NAIA level, which is, not super high up on the list, but even that, it's kind of opened my eyes back up to, oh yeah, there's this world that you were a part of. That's, it was much more interesting and exciting, and it gave you your identity. And there's all kinds of people that are coaching and reaching different levels of this and that, and I'm just like, man, I stepped out of all that to what was I doing? So it's interesting here, you going through the same thing. So you've got,
Absolutely.
have you got your entourage set? So do you have a coach, a nutritionist, your trainer, your PR guy, your like, how's that all going?
I don't have any of those things.
No.
Any of those things. No, I don't. Last year, I was just. I mean, I had a coach. Um, but I didn't have any of those other things. I didn't have a trainer. I wasn't seeing a trainer. I wasn't seeing a nutritionist. I was
Right.
just like literally like scratching and scraping to compete, which making it to USA was like a shock. I was like not I wasn't expecting that. I didn't even really want to go. Honestly, I was just kind of like I was so tired.
What did you
I
jump
was so
to get
tired.
there? You jumped.
Oh, I didn't jump good at all. It was like 42 or maybe.
Uh-huh.
Like, so that's not good. Um, and so my coach is like, it's a down year. Like, you're
Yeah.
gonna make it. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I was like, no, you're gonna make it. And like, I'm qualified. Like, I went and jumped down at Chula Vista,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I jumped there, and I qualified. And it was like a couple of weeks before. But at this point, I had started back training in like February, and it's February of 2021, and it
Mm-hmm.
is now June of 2022. I am tired, like I am gassed, like that
Yeah.
was way too long to be training,
Right.
just because I was like out so long. I
Yeah.
guess we felt like I needed like a very long build up foundation, but I don't necessarily think I needed to have been training that long. Anyway, I was I was very, very gassed, very tired.
Yeah.
Like um, and I was just kind of like, I don't really want to go because one, I know I'm not going to jump well, and I know that's not like the mindset to have going into a competition. But I just was being very realistic.
Right.
Like my body was like hanging
Telling
on
you.
by a thread. I'm
Yeah.
tired. And it was expensive. It was crazy, 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 crazy expensive. I only went for one day. I flew up the day before and I left right after I competed because I couldn't afford to like go 3 days in advance, which is usually what you would want to
Right.
do,
Right.
especially for a major meet like that.
Get
But the
acclimated and
hotels were
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, it was just so frustrating to see because obviously the prices were raised giving the context of the weekend.
Right.
And so, like, even the Motel 6 was $200 a night.
Wow.
It was crazy. I stayed at the La Quinta for $430.
Wow.
The La Quinta, that's not even a hotel. That's like a
That's not even a hotel.
it's not even like a real hotel, but I just couldn't do the motel. I really couldn't do that. Like everybody's like, just stay at like a cheap hotel, and I was just like looking at the pictures. So I was like, I cannot do this. I can't. My
Right.
door cannot be outside. Like
Right.
so. I was like, I'm just gonna go up for one night and stay at somewhere kind of decent,
Right.
and so at least I can have some peace of mind when I'm like sleeping.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but oh man, yeah, that was expensive. I had my parents to help me out. They took care of one of my flights,
Mm-hmm.
luckily. So that helped me save a little bit of money, but it was still crazy expensive, almost $2,000 just to go. I was there for a day.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
and I was just kind of like, it's not sustainable. Like, it's not sustainable to keep on going like this with like absolutely no support, no
Right.
sponsor,
Right.
nothing like that. It's just not realistic. So that's where I am right now is I'm trying to figure out how can I make
Yeah.
this work for myself? What kind of job do I need to where I'll have enough money, but I also have enough time.
Right.
Um, and I'm in a good proximity to a training location. That's one of my main dilemmas right now because there are people that are like, oh, I would love to coach you, or you can come train here, but it's very far.
Right.
And so I'm like, I would have to move. But then if I move, how am I going to pay my rent? And so I'm trying to set myself up perfectly to
Yeah.
where I can have all of these things taken care of. And so it's just taking me a little bit of time. But what I don't want to do is half step, which I kind of feel like I did last year. Like I made the decision. Well, I didn't half step, I went all in, but I did not plan it out well enough, as well as I should have. So I'm trying to do all the necessary planning ahead of time before I'm halfway through and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, wait. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, basically.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things like you said, a lot of moving parts there to make it all work. It's interesting because I know a little bit about what that struggle is like out here. And then, talking with just a few athletes over, I had one kid, Abraham Vogelsang from Norway, who's one of the top under 20 decathletes in the world. And we did a podcast a while back, which I still don't think has been published either, but we're getting them out there.
Working on it.
Once they're done, it's harder than I thought to do this. I thought, oh, we'll just talk and we'll just shove them out there. And it
You want
doesn't
to
work like that.
nitpick and get
They're
the
much
good
easier to
stuff.
do than they are to get out. But we're talking with Abraham about what goes on over there, and it's really different. When they get their athletes and they're kind of in the fold still, and they do all kinds of things for them. So it's interesting out here. It's so competitive and so, like you said, it's kind of unorganized. I think it's really just, it's kind of the American dream, the American story. It's like anybody can go and do it, right? You can come out of nowhere. I mean, one of my favorite sporting events is the US Open in golf in the US, because you literally you could pick up a golf club, a month before the US Open. And if you went and started hitting balls and everything, you could go to a regional competition. And if you shot a good enough score, you would make it to the next round and you could keep going. And then if you won enough different things, you could qualify and compete in the US Open against Tiger Woods and all these other guys at the US Open.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems like there's a story like that almost every year. Well, they'll go, oh yeah, this guy, we used to be on his college team. And then he started, working at Walmart and stuffing boxes, and doing this. And he decided he didn't really like that much. And he went back and he started training and he got himself a different coach and he scraped and did, all the same things that we're talking about. And he put together these 2 or 3 rounds and here he is, he's Cinderella boy, and you're like, that's so cool. The odds are astronomical, so it can and does happen, but it seems like there's a lot of stuff missed, in the middle over here, because there's either, just not enough people out there going, hey, this person's really talented and we need to do this, and then the other part of that, I think, is track and field is still, in the big picture of things, we're still just too small time. If you look at, I mean, college game day on Saturday, there's like 40 football games on today, at least, pro football every week, it's like football's king, and then basketball and baseball. And it's like, you go a long way down the list before you get down to track and field, so is there money in track and field? There's some, is there a lot of money? For some, and then there's a lot of just, wanting to get there. I was that one that was like, I wanted to be Bruce Jenner. So I know Bruce Jenner made money and I know Carl Lewis made money in his day. And I know, but then I know a lot of other guys that had a lot of success like that aren't living like kings, off of the track and field. I remember staying up with my roommate, Dwayne Washington at UCLA. If you're out there listening, Dwayne, haven't talked to you in too long. He and I would sit up our freshman year at night. He was a triple jumper, 52.8, I think. He went to NCAAs his senior year. Long Beach kid like me, we both went to Millikan. So that's why we decided to room together my freshman year. Okay. And we would just sit up sometimes in our loft at night after practice and, talk about those dreams, like, I want to go to the Olympics and I want to do this, and all that. And, it's just, what do you do when you're 19 years old, and you're meeting all these great athletes. And, 1984 was a great year to be at UCLA because a lot of people trained there from around the world. So there were, athletes that were coming in the track at Drake, but, wow, it's just so, you just realize that the confluence of things that have to come around, like you said, to take someone like yourself who's, talented and smart and, great resume, everything's clicked, and like you said, everything you do just it's good for you. It seems to work out. You're good, great coach, great athlete. And it's just like, and what's that push? Where are we going to get that thing that gets you to the next level? Well, listen, Ashley, This is awesome. I love talking with you. I would keep doing this all day, but
Likewise.
we're already into an hour and 15 minutes. I don't want to monopolize your whole day. So if you are willing, we'd love to have you back. And I would love to talk with you more interpersonally on some of these things that you're going through. So let me know if I can be of any help, either with, contacts or ideas or, any of it from, training. I love the fact that you went down to Chula Vista because I think the world of Jeremy Fisher down there. And, I'd realize that's probably for me, that's way out of the way. I'm up here in Santa Monica. So getting down to Orange County
That's
is out
even
of the
more
way for
so.
me. Getting down to Chula Vista. I mean, I've been trying
Yeah.
to get down there to see Jeremy for a long time, but, and he's another, I think his podcast may be out, but, yeah, that, where did you say you're training now? Are you down there in the Golden West area? Are you doing your training at Golden West or at Saddleback, or where'd you find?
No, so I was training at Cerritos this past season. But right now I'm still trying to work all that out, figure that
Yeah.
out. So
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Ash, it was great seeing you again. It's been way too long.
likewise.
Season's still coming up. The next what you're still not quite decided whether you're going to be back, right? So,
Right.
all right. Well, we'll keep that in mind too. All right. Well, hey, thanks again, and have yourself a great rest of the weekend.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I had to look this up. Soka is where
Yes,
we met.
Soka.
That's where it was.
That is, it's in Irvine though, right? Soka.
I don't know. I think it's a little further down.
Concordia. I'm thinking Concordia, maybe Concordia, Irvine. Okay.
Aliso Viejo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a little south of Irvine.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, I just remember it was way out there, Soka University. That's where it was.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That does ring a bell. And then I remember that meet later at Cal State Northridge, like you said. All right, Ash. Well, hey, hang in there, keep working. And I love the decision. I love that, I'm always that person that, when someone says, I'm going to put all my chips on me, I'm just like, okay, I'm pulling for you. You
Thank
can do
you.
anything. You can do anything. Keep, obviously the model contracts and all that, the commercials, that's to me, that would be the way to go. They pay you that kind of money. You can pick your trainers
Yeah,
and go wherever you want. So,
definitely 100%.
all right, girl. Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
time. All right. We'll talk soon.
All right.